Welcome to Blended Scotch Reviews for episode number 16 for Blended Scotch Matchup number 4. This is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, and tonight we'll have a face-off between the famous Grouse Ruby Cask versus Johnnie Walker Red Label. The rules for this match are quite simple. Well, I do look at the history, bottle, label, and marketing, and appearance, nose, and kind of evaluate those and determine, which whiskey wins which of those categories. Really, the main battle, though, is over taste. If we offered these two whiskeys 5 nights in a row, which one would I choose 3 nights out of the 5? And in case of a tie, and that has happened before, price, value, and availability will be the tiebreaker. Now, my glasses are blacked out, but they do have numbers on the bottom. Famous Grouse is number 1. Red Label is in number 2. And for fun, doesn't really have anything to do with the winner, I try to guess which whiskey is in which glass at the end. And then also the winner may get a cocktail. Famous Grouse Ruby Cask. Here's the box. Stretching back to the 1820s when Matthew Gloag began as a grocer and spirits merchant in Perthshire, Gloag's Perth whiskey was a thing, and it was changed by his heirs then to Grouse whiskey in 1896 to capitalize on the famous hunting of grouse that was popular in the Scottish Highlands, and Perth was kind of the end point of a railroad, and from there the hunters would gather and go out and shoot their grouse. And grouse is kind of like a pheasant here in America. It's a cousin of our pheasant. So to change the name from Gloag's Perth whiskey to the Grouse was a clever marketing tool to attract those sportsmen into the sports bars of the day. But then in 1905, just a few years later, not even 10, they changed the name again to the famous Grouse. The Grouse brand has been the best-selling whiskey in Scotland for over 40 years. And this is part of the Cask series that's fairly recent, beginning in 2018, as the Edrington Group, who owns the brand, wanted to expand the core lineup. The Edrington Group also owns 2 main contributing single malt distilleries, Highland Park and the Macallan, that go into these Grouse whiskeys. Johnnie Walker Red. John Walker was born in Kilmarnock, East Ayrshire, Scotland in 1805, and by 1820 he was a grocer who was also dealing in wine and spirits. Now, if you followed the math there, he was 15 when he had his own business. His father had died and left him an inheritance. As a 15-year-old, became a grocer and selling spirits. And so he died, Matthew Gloag died in John Walker died in 1857, and his son Alec and grandson Alexander II took over. In 1860, the Spirits Act was passed, which allowed the blending of malt and grain whiskeys. And Alexander then introduced the square bottles and the label that was tilted precisely at 24 degrees to make it very distinctive from all the other bottles in the marketplace. Plus, you could pack more safely and have less breakage in cases. By 1862, the Walkers were selling 100,000 gallons per year. That's a lot of whiskey for back then. The arrival of a railway line to Kilmarnock greatly assisted in the marketing of this whiskey. And in 1867, the blend was called Old Highland Whiskey. In 1893, the Walkers purchased the Cardew Distillery, and in 1909, they rebranded to Johnnie Walker Red and Black, and included the Walking Man on the label. Johnnie Walker Red was Winston Churchill's favorite Scotch. He would mix it with water and basically drink it all day long. So for history, I'm going to give that prize to the famous Grouse. I think it's actually got the better history. But for bottle, label, and marketing, I've got to give that to the Johnnie Walker, because this bottle and label are just icons in the whiskey world, and their marketing has made this whiskey the best-selling Scotch whiskey in the world. Price, value, and availability. The Grouse is priced just above $25 now, but I purchased this bottle on sale for $19. Johnnie Walker Red, $23. This is all prices I find here in Fort Worth. So Johnnie Walker Red is just a little bit cheaper, but again, the Grouse is a finished whiskey. It's finished in port wine casks. So that's part of the marketing thing. It kind of amps it up just a little bit. So for price, value, and availability, I think I'm going to stick with Johnnie Walker Red there, because it's available all over the world. Its price is a little bit better here locally, even though the Grouse is a finished whiskey. I'm going to still value the Johnnie Walker there. Appearance of the whiskeys. If you understand that Scotch whiskey allows for food coloring, these are basically indistinguishable by appearance. The Grouse, well, the Grouse may be a half shade darker because of the port wine finish, but you know, they both use food coloring, I'm sure. So we'll give appearance to the Grouse as well. I think that little red tinge from the wine influence may be a thing there. All right, I have poured these whiskeys into glasses. I do not know which whiskey's in which glass. So let's nose. I'll start on my left. Got a definite whiskey smell going on there. It's not unpleasant. Very sweet. Maybe fruity. The one on my right. Not as sweet or fruity. Just going off the nose, I'm thinking the one on the right may be glass number 2, Johnnie Walker Red. This one on my left may be the famous Grouse, but we'll wait till we taste them and see. Neither nose was overwhelming. So I'm going to start on the left. So yeah, which one won that contest between the nose? I'm going to say the one on the left. I think it had the more pleasant nose, but it's not overwhelming. So let's take the taste. Sweet and fruity. I'm going to say, going off of the nose and now the flavor, that is definitely the famous Grouse. So that should be glass number 1. That is just a wonderful pour right there. I mean, I really like this Ruby Cask by Famous Grouse. So yeah, that's a nice, sweet, fruity drink there. A lot of guys just go from glass to glass to glass. I've seen people do tastings with 7 or 8 glasses in a row. There is no way I can do that. I struggle enough with doing 2 at a time. I've done 3, and that's just, you know, really rough. All right, the glass on the right. That is definitely Johnnie Walker Red, glass number 2. That is not as sweet as glass number 1. I don't get fruit. I do get, particularly on the finish here, some briny sea breeze, seashore type flavors. So that's the peat, and I love that flavor. These two are so different. To pick a winner here is going to be difficult because it's two entirely different flavors. And I knew this was going to happen. Some of the whiskeys, like the J&B versus Cutty Sark, that was so close I got them confused. But because they were just very similar. But here, the differences could not be bigger. I mean, this is a more of a heavy peated flavor going on. So I love that. It's not heavily peated, but it's peated enough. I mean, it's not. Cutty Sark and J&B both had some peat smoke in there, but this has got a lot more. This has got 3 times as much. And so it really dominates the flavor. That is really pretty good. Let me try the other one. Sweet, light, fruity. They both have a similar mouthfeel, burn. The finish on the Johnnie Walker is definitely stronger. So how am I to, I should say the one on the right, I haven't done the reveal yet. How am I to evaluate these tests? The taste, they are entirely different whiskeys. Nothing similar. So it's really going to come down to some days you feel like a little peat and some days you feel like a little wine flavor. So I'm going to have to go with a tie. When I experienced this when I was doing a Texas rye whiskey tournament, is that the rye whiskeys in Texas, some of them had a dose of the Texas Funk and some did not. And it ended up where the ones with the Texas Funk won consistently. And so I realized it's really not even a fair contest. So I may end up doing the same thing with this blended Scotch whiskey. Is it even fair to compete with a peated whiskey against a non-peated whiskey? Now, Famous Grouse has got some Highland Park 12 in there, which has a little bit of peat, but you can't taste it here. In just the plain basic Highland Park, you can taste it just a wee bit. Okay, so here I'm going to say the taste is a tie, but the mouthfeel, burn, and finish, the finish on the one on the right that I think is Johnnie Walker, that one lasts longer and it gives a very pleasant seashore kind of a finish. So how do I evaluate the winner? The one on the left won the nose, the one on the right won the mouthfeel, burn, and finish, but they tied at taste. Well, I'm going to say that the winner has to go, reduce it down to the price, value, and availability. And so the one on the right, if in fact it's Johnnie Walker. So I'm going to have to do the reveal. I'm saying the one on the left is Famous Grouse, glass number 1. And in fact it is. So the one on the right is Johnnie Walker Red, glass number 2. And so I'm going to say that the Johnnie Walker Red wins due to its finish and the price, value, and availability. So there we go. We have a winner, Johnnie Walker Red is the winner. So, again, though, what I'm finding in this contest every single time is that the peated whiskey seems to win. And even with J&B and Cutty Sark, which aren't really known for having peat, but they do, and I could pick that up. And the J&B I thought was Cutty Sark because it had more of a peat flavor, and I had to do that contest twice. So J&B won, and it ended up having the most peat. So this is a theme throughout this Scotch tournament. So I think my palate just really falls for the peat. All right, the winner gets a cocktail, so stand by. I will make a cocktail with the Johnnie Walker Red. All right, I am back. I've got my Tom Collins glass filled with ice. I've got a shot glass to measure. And I've got Canada Dry Ginger Ale, 0 sugar. We'll start with some ginger ale. Now we'll put the rest of my glass of whiskey in there and add a little bit more. Got a full shot glass of Johnnie Walker Red. And top it off with some more Canada Dry. Just like that. Give it just a little stirring. I don't have one of those fancy cocktail spoons. So just mix it up a little bit. All right, now this will be the third cocktail with Johnnie Walker that I've tried in the last week. The first one was Topo Chico and ice. And that was lame. It was, I mean, refreshing. Okay, it was a hot day. It was a nice, refreshing little drink. But I lost so much flavor from the Johnnie Walker. And I prefer it neat. But, you know, if you talk to people, they say, oh, that's a design for a cocktail. I'm not convinced. And then the other day, I tried it again with I made a Godfather. Yeah, I used some Di Serono and mixed it in there with Johnnie Walker. And that was okay. You know, it was okay. The Amarettos, I use Di Serono, are just too sweet for me. So here we have Canada Dry Ginger Ale. And that is decent. Oh yeah. The peat on the finish comes through. And the ginger ale is very refreshing. So the Johnnie Walker Red with a ginger ale. That makes for a fairly decent little refreshing cocktail. All right. Conclusion. The next blended Scotch that we're going to, or the episode that we're going to have, will be, we're going to look at a couple of the single malts that have gone into these. So with the famous Grouse, we're going to have Macallan. And then representing the Johnnie Walker blend, we've got Kalila 12. So that'll be an interesting contest between the single malts. And those of you who may have watched several of these episodes may say, well, what about the single malts between J&B and Cutty Sark? Well, the problem is I could not acquire any of the single malts that go into J&B. I did get the Bunnahabhain for the Cutty Sark, but I'll have to do that one with another couple of competitors later since I could only find one of the single malts. So that's just how that'll work. But it's worthy to study the single malts that go into these blends. So that'll be Kalila and the Macallan 12 next time on Blended Scotch Reviews. This is Stab the Dragon, out here.